I'm not letting anyone take her from me, even if it costs me everything. The words tore out of Mia Sinclair before she could stop them. 3:22 in the morning. Eddie's Diner on Sunset Boulevard. The black and white checkered floor slick with rainwater, the neon open sign buzzing and flickering red through the window, the smell of burnt coffee and grease hanging thick in the humid air like a curse that could not be lifted. Lightning cracked outside, splitting the sky white for 3 seconds, illuminating everything, the cracked vinyl booth, the chipped white mug she held with both hands, her soaked black and white maid's uniform dripping water onto the seat beneath her. Her left eye swollen shut. Purple and black bruising that made the skin shine like wet plums. Handprint bruises dark as wine stains running across her throat. 5 distinct fingers pressed into her flesh. She was shaking, both hands wrapped around the coffee she had not touched, steam rising into her battered face. Ray, the night cook who had worked at Eddie's for 20 years, stood frozen behind the counter with a spatula in his hand. He was staring at her with his mouth open. He had never seen anything like this. Not in 20 years of night shifts. Mia said it again, quieter this time, to the empty booth across from her. I'm not letting anyone take her from me. Emma. 7 years old. Braided hair that Mia had braided herself 3 days ago. The child who drew pictures of butterflies with colored pencils the shelter provided. The child who hid under Mia's cot during thunderstorms because the sound of rain terrified her. The same child that Mia had been protecting at the women's shelter for exactly 3 months and 2 days. But what Mia did not know at that exact moment, sitting in that diner with her body screaming and her mind screaming louder, was that Alejandro Calabrese had already seen everything. The security cameras in his mansion had captured it all 6 hours earlier. Every second. Every moment. And the man who controlled half of Los Angeles was watching the footage for the 3rd time, his hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles had turned white. Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. Now let us go back. Let us understand how a maid, invisible to the world, became the only person who could change a mafia boss. 9 p.m. that same night. Mia pushed the brass cart down the marble hallway of Alejandro Calabrese's mansion. The wheels squeaked slightly, a sound that seemed to echo off the high ceilings even though she moved slowly, deliberately, trying to make herself smaller than she already was. Trying to disappear completely. This was a skill she had perfected over 26 years of living, the ability to move through a room like a ghost, quiet, faithful, invisible. The marble floors stretched in every direction like a sea of white and black waves. The kind of floors that cost more than the entire apartment building where she lived. She knew this because she had looked up the property records once, in the library, on a computer she had borrowed for exactly 30 minutes. $4 million for the house alone. The marble was Italian. The chandeliers were Baccarat crystal. The paintings on the walls were originals by artists she could not pronounce. She earned $14 an hour cleaning this place. Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night, Mia came here at 8 p.m. and left at 2 a.m. 6 hours of pushing that cart, wiping surfaces, sweeping floors, cleaning bathrooms, disappearing into the spaces between moments. Nobody saw her. Nobody spoke to her. There was a housekeeper named Dorothy who had worked here longer, but Dorothy did not acknowledge Mia beyond pointing at whatever needed cleaning. The guards at the gate saw her name on the list and waved her through. That was all. She needed this job. The money was terrible, but it was steady. $12 an hour at the diner where she worked 6 shifts a week, $14 an hour here, and $4 an hour babysitting Emma on the 2 nights a week that the shelter allowed her. $34 an hour maximum if she worked every available moment. After rent, after the medication her grandmother needed, after food that was not from the grocery store dumpsters, she had almost nothing left at the end of each week. This week she had $78 to her name. $78 until next Friday. Until she could pick up her paycheck from the diner. $78 to last 9 days. The east wing of the mansion was darker than the rest. The windows there faced the back gardens, and the December night pressed against the glass like something alive. Mia pushed her cart toward the library, her footsteps muffled by the plush carpet that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She had been assigned to clean the library tonight. Dust the shelves. Vacuum. Wipe down the mahogany desk that was the size of a small car. But as she approached the east wing, she heard something. A sound that made her stop. A child crying. Not loud. Muffled. Like someone had put a hand over the child's mouth to muffle the sound, and the child was still crying anyway, trying not to, trying to be quiet but failing. A small, frightened sound that made something cold and sharp move down Mia's spine like a blade through water. She knew that sound. She had heard it before. In the shelter. From children who had been hurt. Children who had learned that crying too loudly brought punishment. So they cried quietly instead. Small, suppressed sounds that were somehow more terrible than screaming. Mia's hand stilled on the cart handle. She was not supposed to go into the east wing. The instructions had been very clear. Clean everywhere except the east wing. That area is locked and off limits. Dorothy had been explicit about this. Do not ask why. Do not explore. Do not go where you are not supposed to go. But the sound came again. A child's whimper. The kind of sound that reaches into a person's chest and grabs their heart. Mia moved toward the sound without deciding to move. Her legs simply carried her forward. She passed the library entrance and continued down the hallway, her footsteps silent on the carpet. The crying grew slightly louder. It was coming from behind a closed door. A heavy wooden door with a brass lock. The kind of door that belonged in a mansion like this. The kind of door that probably cost more than her rent too. She pressed her ear against the wood. A child. Definitely a child. Breathing hard. Trying to stop crying. Failing. Mia reached for the door handle. It was locked. She pulled anyway, pulling hard, her small hand straining against the brass, but nothing happened. The door did not budge. The lock held. That was when she heard the voice. Deep. Male. Italian accent wrapped around English words like silk wrapped around steel. Coming from somewhere behind her, somewhere down the hallway. Alejandro Calabrese was not supposed to be home until late. She had heard Dorothy mention this to one of the guards. The boss would be at dinner downtown. He would not return until after midnight. He was supposed to be gone. He was not gone. Footsteps approached. Measured. Unhurried. The kind of footsteps that belonged to a man who had never needed to rush anywhere in his life. A man who lived in a world that waited for him. Mia turned from the door and tried to move quickly back toward the main hallway, back toward her cart, back toward invisibility. But she moved too fast. Her shoe caught the edge of the carpet. Her body stumbled forward slightly, just enough to make noise. Just enough to draw attention. The footsteps stopped. She froze. Every muscle in her body went absolutely still. Do not move. Do not breathe. Do not exist. A figure emerged from the shadows of the hallway. A man. Tall. Broad-shouldered in a way that made the hallway seem smaller. He wore a black Armani suit, the jacket unbuttoned, the white shirt beneath open enough to show the strong line of his collarbone. His hair was dark, completely dark, no grey, though he carried himself like a man who was past his first youth. His eyes were the color of storm clouds right before lightning, intense and penetrating, and they were looking directly at her. A scar ran from the corner of his left eye down to his cheekbone, thin and pale against olive skin. This was Alejandro Calabrese. The man who owned this mansion. The man who employed her. The man she had never been closer than 20 feet to until this moment. He said nothing. He simply looked at her. Mia's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break her ribs. She tried to make herself smaller. She pulled her shoulders inward. She looked down at her shoes. Do not see me. Do not speak to me. Let me disappear. But Alejandro Calabrese did not let her disappear. Behind him, footsteps. Multiple footsteps. Men's voices, low and rough, speaking Italian too quickly for her to follow. He turned slightly, raising his hand without looking away from Mia, and the voices stopped. The footsteps retreated down the hallway. Then he looked at the locked door. At the place where her ear had been pressed against the wood moments before. Understanding moved across his face like a storm cloud. He turned back to her. What were you doing? His voice was exactly like she had imagined. Deep and solid like an oath. The kind of voice that could probably make people do things they did not want to do. The kind of voice that held power inside it like a gun holds bullets. Mia's throat closed. She could not speak. She could barely breathe. I heard the child. I heard a child. The words came out barely a whisper. Her voice sounded like glass breaking, fragile and sharp and wrong. He studied her for a long moment. His storm-grey eyes moved across her face like he was reading something written there. Like he could see inside her, see all her fears and her secrets and the desperate, hungry love she carried for a 7-year-old girl she was not supposed to care about this much. And then he did something unexpected. He stepped to the side. He moved away from the locked door, creating a space between himself and the hallway entrance. Not an invitation exactly. But not a refusal either. A choice. An opening. Mia did not move. She did not understand what was happening. This was the man whose mansion she cleaned. This was a man who probably made more money in a single hour than she made in a month. This was a man surrounded by other men in dark suits with bulges under their jackets that suggested weapons. This was a man connected to the kind of world where people disappeared. And he was stepping aside. Outside, lightning cracked again, splitting the sky white. Thunder followed, shaking the windows. Mia moved forward slowly, her body tense, waiting for something terrible to happen. She passed him carefully, keeping her distance, keeping her eyes down. She did not touch him. She barely breathed as she moved past. He did not stop her. He did not speak. She reached the locked door and found it already unlocked. It swung open at the lightest touch of her hand. Inside, the room was lit by a single lamp. And there, sitting on a bed that was too large for her small body, with her hands wrapped around her knees, with tears running down her face, was a child with braided hair. Emma. The same 7-year-old girl that Mia had been protecting at the women's shelter for 3 months and 2 days. The child she was supposed to care for only during official shelter hours. The child she was not supposed to love like this. The child that meant everything to her. Behind Mia, in the doorway, Alejandro Calabrese watched in absolute silence. And something moved behind his storm-grey eyes. Something cold. Something dangerous. Something that suggested that the people who had brought Emma to his mansion had made a catastrophic mistake. Next time on this channel, everything changes. Subscribe now so you do not miss what happens next. The marble floor of Alejandro Calabrese's mansion stretched out like a frozen lake, and Mia Sinclair's reflection stared back at her from its mirror-polished surface, distorted and small. 9 o'clock in the evening. The household staff had gone home. The security guards were stationed at the front gates, 3 miles of driveway away. The vast east wing of the mansion held nothing but silence and locked doors. She pushed her cleaning cart forward, the wheels squeaking softly against the stone. Her black and white uniform hung loose on her frame. She had lost 12 pounds in the last 3 weeks from stretching her groceries, from skipping meals, from the constant calculation of which bills could wait and which ones could not. $78 remained in her bank account. 78. That number haunted her like a curse that could not be erased. Her landlord's words still echoed in her ears. Gerald Voss had cornered her on the stairs of her apartment building 2 days ago, his breath smelling like whiskey and anger. $35,000, Miss Sinclair. You have 14 days. After that, the locks change and your belongings go to storage. You will not be able to afford to retrieve them." His voice had been measured, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. "I have already rented your unit to someone who can actually pay their bills. $35,000. $35,000. She had whispered it to herself 1,000 times, as if repetition might conjure some solution from the air. She made $16 an hour cleaning this mansion 2 days a week. She made $14 an hour waitressing at the Golden Coast Diner 6 nights a week. She made $12 an hour as a weekend aide at the women's shelter on Saturdays and Sundays. 3 jobs. 70 hours a week. And still, the numbers would not stretch far enough. The east wing hallway was darker than the rest of the mansion. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out onto the Hollywood Hills, where the city lights twinkled like stars that had fallen to earth and gotten stuck. Mia had been instructed never to come to this wing. Mr. Calabrese's private quarters, his assistant had said with finality. "You do not need to clean there. You understand." She had understood. She had nodded. She had made a note on her cleaning map to skip the east wing entirely. But then, at 8:47 in the evening, as she was finishing the second-floor landing, she heard it. A child's cry. Muffled, coming from behind a door. A sound like pain mixed with terror mixed with desperation. Mia froze, her polishing cloth suspended in the air. The cry came again, softer this time, more frightened. And underneath the fear, something else. A child trying not to cry. A child that had learned that crying brings punishment. Her hands began to shake. She moved down the east wing corridor, her cart abandoned, her feet silent on the marble. The cry seemed to pull her forward like a rope wrapped around her chest. The third door on the left. The sound was coming from behind the third door on the left. Mia tried the handle. Locked. She knelt down, pressing her face against the crack beneath the door. The darkness on the other side made it impossible to see, but she could hear breathing. Small, frightened breathing. The breathing of a child. "Hello?" Mia whispered, her voice barely a sound. "Who is there?" For a long moment, nothing. Then, so quietly she almost did not hear it, a voice. "Miss Mia?" The name hit her like a knife through the chest. Emma. The 7-year-old girl with braided hair and brown eyes that had seen too much. The child who had come to the women's shelter 3 months and 2 days ago with cigarette burns on her arms and fear permanently etched into her expression. The child Mia had been assigned to care for during the afternoon shift, helping her with homework, braiding her hair, slowly teaching her that not all adults inflict pain. 2 weeks ago, on a Tuesday, Mia had made Emma a yellow friendship bracelet from embroidery floss. Emma had worn it every day since, refusing to take it off even to shower. Mia had asked her why once, and Emma had whispered, "Because you made it. And you are the only person who does not hurt me." Emma. Mia breathed against the door. "Baby, it is me. It is Miss Mia. Are you okay? Are you hurt?" A small sound came from the other side. A whimper. Then, louder, a desperate whisper. "Miss Mia, help me. Please. Help me. I do not know where I am. It is so dark. Please help me." Mia's hands flew to the doorknob, pulling, twisting, throwing her full weight against it. The door did not budge. The lock was solid, professional, the kind of lock that had been installed to keep something either in or out. Probably both. "I am going to get you out," Mia said, speaking through the crack under the door, her voice shaking. "I promise you, Emma. I promise on my life. I will get you out of there. Do you understand me? You promise?" The child's voice was so small. So fragile. "I promise. I am going to." Footsteps. Heavy boots on marble. The sound of someone large, someone moving with purpose, someone who belonged here and commanded the space through the sheer force of their presence. Mia stood up so fast her vision spun. She yanked her cleaning cloth from her pocket and pressed it against one of the paintings on the wall, pretending, desperately pretending, to be dusting, to belong, to be nothing but the invisible woman that everyone in this mansion had learned to ignore. The footsteps came closer. Closer. Around the corner appeared a man Mia had never seen before. He was broad-shouldered, thick-necked, with a suit that cost more than everything she owned but did not fit right across his shoulders, suggesting that his muscle had been built through violence and not through leisure. His face was angular and cruel, with small eyes that contained no kindness, no hesitation, no humanity. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence of the hallway pressed down like a physical weight. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Rain had begun to fall outside, pattering against the windows, the first drops of a storm coming in from the Pacific. "You," he said. His voice was like gravel dragged across concrete. "You are not supposed to be in this wing." Mia's mouth went dry. She forced words out, stuttering slightly, letting her nervousness show because her nervousness was honest. I am sorry, sir. I got turned around. I was just cleaning and I lost track of where I was. I will go. Right now. I am going." She reached for her cleaning cloth, dropped it deliberately, bent to pick it up, using the moment to steady her hands. When she straightened, she made sure to keep her eyes down, submissive, invisible. She had learned this skill over 27 years of being a woman without power. She knew how to make herself smaller. How to make men feel large. The man stared at her for 10 long seconds. His jaw clenched. His small eyes moved across her face, then down her body, with a kind of assessment that made her skin crawl. A predator calculating whether prey was worth the effort. Then he pointed toward the corridor behind him. "Get out. Now." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." "I am sorry." Mia moved past him quickly, keeping her distance, keeping her movements quick but not so quick as to seem like she was running from something. She made herself breathe normally. She made herself walk with purpose. She did not look back. Behind her, she heard the man unlock the east wing door with a key card. She heard Emma's muffled cry cut off as the door closed. She kept walking, her legs steady even though her heart was beating so hard she thought her ribs might crack. By the time she reached the main staircase, she was trembling. She gathered her cleaning supplies with shaking hands. She did not finish the second floor. She clocked out and walked to her car, a 2008 Honda Civic with a check engine light that had been on for 6 months, parked on the circular drive beneath the mansion's portico. It was only when she was sitting in the driver's seat, only when the doors were locked and the engine was running, that she allowed herself to breathe. Emma was in that mansion. Emma, who should have been in the shelter, who should have been safe, who should have been learning to trust again. Emma was locked in a room in the east wing of Alejandro Calabrese's house, and there was a man with cruel eyes and a suit that did not fit, and Mia had absolutely no idea what was happening. But what she did not know was that the man in the expensive suit was Douglas Hale, and he had been watching her through the security camera the entire time. He had been watching her kneel at the door. Watching her whisper promises she could not possibly keep. Watching her make contact with the merchandise. And at that exact moment, in his office on the ground floor, Douglas Hale was making a phone call to the person who had hired him to bring Emma to this mansion. He was describing the woman in the black and white uniform. He was reporting a problem. "There is a worker here," he said, his voice flat and professional. "A cleaning woman. She found the east wing." She made contact with the girl. In her penthouse office overlooking the city, Catherine Mercer closed her eyes and smiled. Catherine Mercer, who sat on the board of 3 charities, who had been photographed at 100 galas, whose name appeared in the society pages as a patron of arts and music. Catherine Mercer, whose charity foundation had moved 43 children through her network in the last 2 years, each one generating a profit of $15,000. "Handle it," she said simply. "And Douglas? Make sure she understands what happens when people interfere with my business." In the parking lot of Alejandro Calabrese's mansion, Mia Sinclair sat in her car with her hands on the steering wheel and made a decision that would change everything. She was going to go back inside. She was going to find out who had taken Emma. And she was going to get her out. Even if it cost her everything. The hallway of the East Wing stretched before her like a tunnel with no end. Emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly green glow, and the summer storm outside made the windows rattle in their frames. Mia's sneakers made no sound against the marble floor as she moved toward the locked door, the screwdriver from the maintenance closet heavy in her pocket. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She had changed out of her maid's uniform into jeans and a t-shirt, trying to look like someone who belonged in a servant's corridor at 10:30 at night. Trying to look like anything other than what she was, terrified, desperate, and about to throw away everything. The lock took 40 seconds. 40 seconds of her hand shaking so badly she could barely grip the screwdriver, 40 seconds of listening for footsteps, 40 seconds of thunder rolling across the sky outside like God's anger made audible. The lock clicked. The door opened. Emma was sitting on a bare mattress in an empty room, still wearing the same pink dress with the white collar, the dress she had disappeared in 3 days ago from the shelter. When the girl's eyes found Mia's face, everything inside the child seemed to light up like a candle someone had just lit. She stood on shaky legs and ran. Mia caught her, lifted her onto her hip, felt Emma's small arms wrap around her neck with a kind of grip that felt like drowning. "We have to go, baby. We have to go right now. Do you understand me?" Emma nodded against her shoulder. Mia turned toward the door. Toward the hallway. Toward escape. Douglas Hale was standing in the doorway. He was a man of medium height but packed with muscle, the kind of muscle that came from violence, and he wore a suit that did not fit quite right because it was not tailored for the way he carried himself. His eyes were the color of wet gravel, and they were looking at Mia with the kind of amusement a predator reserves for prey that has just made a terrible mistake. "Put the girl down," he said. His voice was flat, professional, the way a man might ask someone to file a report. "She doesn't belong to you," Mia said. The words came out steadier than she felt. Hale laughed. A sound like gravel grinding beneath boot heels. "You have no idea what you just walked into, sweetheart." Mia tried to move past him. Just tried to slide around his body, still holding Emma, still moving toward the hallway. Toward anywhere that was not this room. But Hale's hand came up fast and closed around her throat like a vice made of bone and callus, and suddenly she was airborne. Suddenly her back was slamming against the wall so hard that her skull bounced off the plaster and the whole room tilted sideways. Emma screamed. A sound like nothing Mia had ever heard before, a primal shriek of terror and betrayal. Mia's fingers clawed at Hale's hand, trying to pry it away from her throat, but she could not breathe. Could not pull oxygen into her lungs. Black spots bloomed at the edges of her vision like flowers growing in fast forward. Her legs kicked uselessly against the wall. "You should have minded your own business," Hale said. He sounded almost conversational, the way he might comment on the weather. Then he hit her. Once. The impact exploded through her face, and she tasted blood, tasted copper and salt and her own mortality. Twice. The second hit came from a different angle, and her eye swelled shut before the pain could even fully register. 3 times. The third time his knuckles connected with her cheekbone, and something inside her head went quiet. Hale dropped her. She crumpled to the floor like a marionette with cut strings, gasping, choking, clawing at the carpet. But he was not done. He reached down, grabbed Emma by the wrist, and dragged her toward the door. The child was screaming. Over and over, a single phrase, "Miss Mia, Miss Mia, Miss Mia." Mia tried to stand. Tried to push herself up off the floor. Her ribs screamed when she moved, but adrenaline was a powerful thing, and desperation was stronger. She made it to her hands and knees. Then to one knee. Hale kicked her in the ribs. The impact came from the side, and it sent her sprawling across the floor again. "If you tell anyone about this," he said, his voice still that horrible calm, "I will kill you and everyone you love. Your neighbors, Your landlord. Anyone at your shelter. Anyone who ever knew your name. Do you understand me? Mia could not answer. Could not speak. Could barely breathe. He locked the door behind him. The sound of the lock clicking into place was like a coffin lid closing. She lay there on the floor for 20 minutes. Possibly longer. Time had become something elastic and unreliable. She lay there tasting blood and listening to Emma's screams fading down the hallway, and something inside her chest cracked open like an egg, like a shell that could not hold the pressure anymore. But the girl was worth more than her safety. Emma was worth anything. Mia crawled to the window. Crawled because standing felt impossible, because every breath sent lightning through her ribs. The window was old, the frame painted shut decades ago, but she found a screwdriver still in her pocket, a second one, dropped when Hale grabbed her, and she worked it into the paint until something gave. Until the frame budged. Until the window slid open with a sound like a scream. The ledge was about 10 feet above the garden, above the manicured rosebushes and the ornamental hedges that Alejandro Calabrese paid people to keep perfect. Mia did not think. Thinking was a luxury she could not afford. She climbed through the window feet first, hung from the ledge for 1 second, then let go. The fall knocked the wind out of her lungs. She landed in the hedges, branches tearing at her clothes and skin, the impact sending fresh pain through her ribs. She lay there for a moment, gasping like a fish pulled from water. Then the summer rain started. Not a gentle rain. Not the kind of rain that fell like a caress. This was violent rain, rain like a fist, rain that came down so hard and so fast that within seconds she was soaked through to the skin. Her clothes clung to her. Water poured down her face, mixing with blood from her split lip, and she pushed herself up and ran. She ran through the gardens of Alejandro Calabrese's mansion. Ran toward the gates. Ran into the rain-soaked streets of Hollywood Hills at 10:45 at night, and she did not stop running for nearly an hour. At 11:15 that same night, Alejandro Calabrese sat in his office in the south wing of his mansion, a room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Los Angeles, and watched a woman he barely knew take a beating for a child she had been ordered to care for. The office was all dark wood and leather, the kind of space that announced power without needing to speak. Alejandro sat at his desk reviewing security footage on a screen the size of a small car. His lieutenants Bruno and Pietro stood behind him, silent as ghosts. Alejandro was 42 years old. He had a body built like a man who grew up fighting, broad shoulders, thick neck, the kind of musculature that came from bars and streets, not from gymnasiums. His face had seen too much. A scar ran from the corner of his left eye down to his cheekbone, a knife wound from when he was 23 and still learning how to survive in the world his father had cursed him with. His knuckles were scarred too, the kind of scarring that came from years of hitting things that needed hitting. He watched the footage. Watched Mia Sinclair walk into the East Wing room. Watched Emma run into her arms. Watched Douglas Hale block the doorway. And then he watched what came next, and something in his chest went absolutely still. He watched the beating. Watched her take the impacts without making a sound, watched her keep her body between the child and the violence, watched her try to protect Emma even as her own skull bounced off the wall. Watched Hale drag the girl away while Mia clawed at nothing. Pietro shifted his weight. "Boss, we didn't know Hale was keeping anyone in that room." Alejandro did not respond. He rewound the footage. Watched it again. Watched her face as she whispered promises to Emma, promises she had no way of keeping. Watched the way she did not hesitate. Watched the way she took the beating and still tried to fight. "Who is she?" Bruno asked. Alejandro pulled up her employment file on his computer. Mia Sinclair. 26 years old. 3 jobs. Lives on 8th Street. No criminal record. He had seen her cleaning his floors for 8 months and never once looked at her face. She had been invisible to him, like dust, like air. Necessary but unnoticed. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his voice came out low and steady, the kind of steady that made men flinch. Who authorized Hale to use my property for his operation? Bruno and Pietro exchanged a look. The kind of look that communicated everything: confusion, fear, the dawning realization that this situation was about to spiral into something catastrophic. We will find out immediately, Bruno said. Alejandro stood. He was 6 foot 1 inch tall, and when he stood, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Find the girl. Find the woman. And bring Hale to me. I do not care what you have to do. He walked to the window. Below him, Los Angeles glittered like spilled diamonds, like a city of wealth and power. Like a city where he had built everything from nothing. His father had beat him senseless in a one-bedroom apartment in East Los Angeles. Beat him until he learned to fight back. Beat him until he was 10 years old and decided that no child would ever again suffer the way he had suffered. He had kept that promise to himself. Built an empire on the bones of men who preyed on the weak. And now, in his own house, on his own property, a man had been trafficking children. The shame was a physical thing, like a fist in his stomach. He watched the security footage one more time. Mia's face as she promised Emma she would get her out. The way she did not hesitate. The way she took the beating and still tried to fight. Something in his chest that had been locked away for a very long time cracked open. At 4 o'clock in the morning, Bruno located Mia through street cameras and GPS on her phone. She was at Eddie's Diner on 5th and Main, a place where night shift workers went to fall apart in booths that had seen 40 years of human misery. By 4:30, Alejandro walked through the diner door. Rain was still coming down outside, hammering against the windows, and he was wearing an overcoat that cost more than Mia made in a year. His clothes were dry. Everything about him announced that he did not have to run in the rain like everyone else. Mia was alone in the corner booth. She looked up when he entered, and recognition flickered across her one good eye. She tried to stand. Mr. Calabrese, I can explain. He held up one hand. Walked across the diner while the night clerk did his best to become invisible. Sat down across from her in the booth, moving slowly, deliberately, the way someone might move around a wounded animal they were trying not to spook. Up close, the damage was worse than the security footage had shown. Her left eye was swollen completely shut, the skin around it turning purple and black. There was a handprint bruise across her throat, the shape of fingers so clear it looked like a photograph of violence. Her lip was split, her cheekbone swollen, and when she held herself rigid on the booth seat, Alejandro knew her ribs were broken or coming close. Where does it hurt? He asked. Everywhere, she whispered. I saw the footage. I saw what you tried to do. Is Emma? My men are searching for her now. I did not know Hale was using my property. This will not happen again. Mia started crying. Not the gentle kind of crying. The kind that comes from shock and exhaustion and the full weight of understanding that you have sacrificed everything and it might not be enough. She put her face in her hands, and her shoulders shook. I only have $78, she said through her tears. $78 is all I have left. I cannot pay for a doctor. I cannot pay my landlord. I am going to lose my apartment. I am nobody. Why would you help me? Why would anyone help someone like me? Alejandro leaned forward. His voice came out quiet, and it sounded like an oath. Because you put your body between a child and a monster. That makes you somebody. He pulled out his phone. Made a call in Italian, rapid and clipped. Within 30 minutes, a doctor arrived at the diner. A woman in her 60s with the kind of competent hands that had fixed people in alleys and cars and safe houses. She treated Mia's injuries while the waitress sat in the booth, treating her the way she might treat a frightened animal. The eye will heal, the doctor said, her voice matter-of-fact. The ribs are bruised, not broken. You are lucky. Mia said nothing. Lucky felt like a word that belonged to other people. Alejandro paid the doctor in cash. $2,000. She took it without comment, packed her bag, and disappeared back into the rain like she had never been there at all. I cannot pay you back, Mia said. I am not asking you to. Outside, lightning split the sky in half. The thunder came 2 seconds later, so close that the windows rattled in their frames. Mia looked at the man across from her, this man the city feared, this man who controlled empires, and saw something in his eyes she did not expect, the same kind of damage she carried. The same kind of wound that did not heal, just learned to live behind scar tissue. You are coming with me, Alindro said. Where? Somewhere safe. Until this is finished. Mia looked down at her hands. Hands that had scrubbed other people's floors for 8 months. Hands that had tried to save a child and failed. She was about to say no. She was about to stand up and walk out into the rain and disappear into the city the way she always did, the way invisible people learned to do. But something stopped her. Something in the way he was looking at her. Like she mattered. Like she was not invisible at all. She nodded. The sun broke through the clouds at 6:38 a.m., and the first thing Alindro Calabrese did was place his hand on the small of Mia Sinclair's back as they climbed the stairs to the safe house in Santa Monica. The apartment was sparse, clean, overlooking the Pacific. Ocean air carried salt and spray through the open windows. Bruno and Pietro took positions outside the door, their black suits already dark with morning dew, their expressions carved from stone. Alindro guided Mia to the bedroom, soft linens, pale walls, a single window framing the endless water. Rest, he said, his voice deep and solid like an oath. Heal. I will handle this. Mia stood in the center of the room, still wearing the black and white maid's uniform, now streaked with dried blood and rain. Her left eye had swollen completely shut. The handprints on her throat had darkened to purple so deep they looked like bruises carved into her skin. She looked at this man, this impossibly powerful man, and asked the only question that mattered. You will find Emma. Alindro's jaw tightened. He had not told her how they found the trafficking ring, but Mia's hands had trembled when she described the locked room in the East Wing, the small voice calling out in the darkness. I give you my word, he said. And in 7 words, he remade her understanding of what promises could mean. By 7:04 a.m., his men located the warehouse in Long Beach. A sprawling industrial structure near the port, 3 stories, no windows on the east side, steel doors reinforced from the inside. 12 men in black tactical gear assembled in the parking lot 3 blocks away. They moved without speaking, each one knowing his role the way breathing knows how to happen. Marco checked his watch. 7 minutes. That was all they needed. 7 minutes to extract 6 children and 1 specific girl with copper-red hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. The doors came off their hinges in seconds. No gunfire. No negotiation. Extraction complete at 7:11 a.m. Emma was wrapped in a hospital blanket, her small frame shaking, her voice calling out a name over and over. Miss Mia. Miss Mia. Miss Mia. The ride back to Santa Monica took 37 minutes. Emma sat in the back of the black SUV with Marco beside her, his massive frame somehow gentle, his scarred hands careful not to frighten her further. She was 7 years old but looked older, the way trauma ages children from the inside out. Her eyes carried the weight of things no child should ever see. She held onto the blanket like it was the only solid thing in a world that had shattered into pieces. When the door to the safe house opened, Emma ran. Her small legs carried her across the living room at full speed, and Mia caught her, this small broken child, and sank to her knees on the hardwood floor. You're safe, Mia whispered, and the words cracked like thin ice breaking. You're safe, you're safe, you're safe. She repeated it like a prayer, like if she said it enough times it would erase everything that had been done. Emma clung to her neck, her thin arms impossibly strong, her small body shaking with sobs she had been holding since the locked room in the mansion. Mia rocked her, whispering into her hair, her own tears falling onto the child's head. 14 months. 14 months Mia had been protecting Emma at the shelter, teaching her to trust, and then Douglas Hale had stolen her away in a single afternoon. Now, holding her again, Mia understood what it meant to be given back something you thought you had lost forever. Emma looked up at her with those storm-colored eyes. "I knew you would come," she said. "I knew you would find me." The simple certainty in her voice broke something else in Mia's chest, something that would need time to heal. Alindro watched from the doorway. Marco had seen it happen before, the way his boss's expression shifted when something precious entered his orbit. But this was different. This man who commanded empires, who had clawed his way out of his own violent childhood, was watching a maid and a rescued child hold each other like they were the last two pieces of a broken world. Something cracked in his chest. Something that had calcified years ago began to thaw. He did not move. He did not approach. He simply witnessed. By 8:56 a.m., Alindro's people had traced every thread. Catherine Mercer's foundation. Shipping manifests. Financial records showing wire transfers of $4.7 million over 5 years. 217 children moved through the network. 217. Each name documented, each transaction recorded with the clinical precision of a woman who believed herself untouchable. The West Coast Children's Foundation, established 18 years ago, built on stolen lives and blood money disguised as charity. Alindro made one phone call at 9:13 a.m. His contact at the FBI picked up on the first ring. Alindro's voice was ice-wrapped in silk. "I am handing you the case of the decade. 200 children. 47 million in laundered proceeds. Complete documentation." Silence on the other end. "Then, what do you want?" "Guarantees. Federal prison. Maximum sentences. Public arrests. No plea deals. No reduced time. These people walk into a courtroom and they never walk out." The FBI contact exhaled slowly. "I'll need to brief my director. You have 2 hours." At 10:38 a.m., Douglas Hale was found cowering in a motel room in Riverside. Room 203, curtains drawn, a bottle of cheap whiskey on the nightstand, his hands shaking so badly he could barely dress himself. Alindro's men did not kill him. They knew better. Death would be too quick, too easy, too merciful. They brought him to a warehouse in Vernon, hands zip-tied behind his back, and placed him on his knees in the center of the concrete floor. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. The sound of his own breathing was the only thing Douglas heard for what felt like hours but was actually 17 minutes. Then Alindro arrived. He was still wearing the same white shirt from the diner, the cuffs rolled up, his dark hair disheveled from the night he had not slept. He crouched down in front of Douglas, his eyes the color of storm clouds, carrying the weight of every child he had never been able to save. "You put your hands on a woman," Alindro said, his voice like a blade cutting through air, "who was protecting a child. You beat her unconscious. You trafficked in human lives, sold flesh like it was inventory, destroyed families for profit." Douglas Hale's mouth opened and closed like a fish suffocating on dry land. "Please, there is no mercy for you." The words fell like stones into still water. "There is no plea deal. There is no reduced time. You are going to spend the rest of your life in a federal prison cell, and every day you wake up, you will remember this moment. You will remember that you chose to do these things, and no one stopped you, and now no one will." Douglas Hale collapsed, his body folding in on itself like a puppet with its strings cut. He sobbed, gasping, choking sounds that echoed off the concrete walls. The FBI arrived at 11:03 a.m. and took him into custody. The handcuffs closed with a sound like a door slamming shut on his entire life. Catherine Mercer was in her office on the 42nd floor of the Mercer Tower when the world ended. She sat behind her glass desk, sipping herbal tea, reviewing donation letters from people who believed in her foundation's work. The windows overlooked downtown Los Angeles, the sprawling city a kingdom of her making. She did not hear the elevators being stopped. She did not hear the federal agents assembling in the hallway. The door to her office opened at 11:58 a.m., and suddenly there were 20 agents in dark windbreakers, hands on their weapons, warrants held out like accusations. Catherine set down her tea very slowly. Her composure was flawless, a habit built over decades of maintaining an image. "This is a mistake," she said, her voice steady. "I have lawyers. Excellent lawyers." The lead agent, a woman with grey eyes and a scar along her jawline, read her the charges. Human trafficking. Racketeering. Conspiracy. Fraud. Wire fraud. Money laundering. Conspiracy to commit child exploitation. Catherine's face finally cracked as the words accumulated like stones in her chest. The color drained from her skin. Her perfect manicured hands trembled as they were placed behind her back. The handcuffs were silver, expensive, indifferent to her wealth and status. They did not care that she wore a Chanel suit. They did not care that her family name had been on buildings for 3 generations. She was led out of the elevator at 12:17 p.m., and cameras captured every moment. News helicopters circled overhead. She walked through a gauntlet of reporters, and Landlord had ensured that every major news outlet in Los Angeles had cameras positioned at the exact right angles. Her public execution was broadcast live. Mia stood on the balcony of the safe house at 3:38 p.m. that same afternoon, her body screaming with pain, her left eye still swollen shut, the sun warm on her face. The rain had stopped. The sky had cleared to a pale blue, almost fragile in its beauty. Emma was asleep inside, her small body finally calm, her breathing finally steady. Mia had stayed beside her until the child's fingers had loosened their grip on her hand. Now she stood alone, watching the ocean break into white foam against the rocks below. She thought about her apartment on 8th Street. The eviction notice. The $35,000 she would never have in the 8 days remaining before the landlord changed the locks. She thought about how close she had come to dying in that diner, how close Douglas Hale's fists had come to stopping her heart permanently. She thought about Emma, traumatized forever, carrying wounds that would take years to heal. Her hand shook on the balcony railing. She wondered if any of it mattered. If she should have just kept her head down, stayed invisible, let the world break her quietly the way it always did to women like her. Then a seagull landed on the railing next to her. It tilted its head, unafraid, studying her with one bright eye. Mia laughed despite herself, a broken sound that caught in her throat. The bird tilted its head again, as if asking her, "Why are you crying when you are still breathing? Still here. Still alive." She closed her eyes and felt the sun on her face. And she thought, but I didn't stay quiet. I didn't look away. Emma is alive because I fought. That has to count for something. By dawn the next morning, Douglas Hale was processed into Terminal Island Federal Penitentiary wearing an orange jumpsuit that fit him like a funeral shroud. 40 years. No parole. No hope of release before he was ancient, broken, ready for the grave. Catherine Mercer was transported to Federal Prison Camp Alderson in West Virginia. 45 years. Her perfect life, dismantled. Her foundation dissolved. Its assets seized and redirected to child recovery programs. Every victim of her trafficking network located and placed in protective custody with trauma specialists, counselors, and safe housing. The justice was not swift or dramatic. It was systematic. It was complete. And it was televised so that everyone in Los Angeles would know Landlord Calabrese protected what was precious to him. 3 months after that morning when the sun touched the horizon and changed everything, Mia Sinclair stood in a community college classroom in downtown Los Angeles, holding a graded exam with a bright red A circled at the top. The fluorescent lights hummed their tired song above her head. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked at the grade. Nobody had ever told her she was smart before. Not her parents, not her landlords, not the people whose marble floors she had spent years on her knees cleaning. But here it was, proof written in red ink, you can do this. You can become something more. The professor, a woman with kind eyes and silver streaks in her dark hair, stopped her after class. "Miss Sinclair, your essay on social systems and poverty was exceptional. Have you thought about going beyond community college? About university? Mia opened her mouth to say something dismissive, something about how that was not for people like her, but she stopped herself. She thought about the diner. About facing Douglas Hale. About standing up when every rational part of her brain screamed to stay silent. "I will think about it," she said quietly. The professor smiled. "You should." That evening, Mia opened the door to her small studio apartment on Figueroa Street and found a package wrapped in brown paper sitting on her doorstep. Her name was written on it in careful, deliberate handwriting. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Inside was her grandmother's recipe book. The one with notes in the margins written in ink that had faded to sepia over 40 years. The one she had pawned 2 years ago when the rent was due and she had exactly $47 to her name. She sat on the floor in her apartment and cried for over an hour, holding the book like it was made of spun glass, like it might dissolve if she breathed too hard on it. There was no note. There did not need to be. She knew. Alejandro had tracked it down through 5 different pawn shops across Los Angeles, paying whatever they demanded, asking no questions, leaving no trail. Bruno had done the work, Mia would learn later, but Alejandro had requested it. "She deserves to have it back," he had said simply. That was all. No explanation, no fanfare, no expectation of gratitude. Just the gift, returned quietly, as if the loss had never happened. They met for coffee once a week at a cafe called the Brass Kettle on Venice Boulevard. It was neutral territory, public, safe. Alejandro would arrive at precisely 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, always in a black tailored suit despite the heat, always alone except for Bruno waiting outside in an SUV with tinted windows. He would order black coffee, no sugar, no cream. She would order whatever the cafe had made fresh that morning. They would sit at a small table by the window and talk about her classes, about Emma, about the slow work of healing. How was sociology? He asked one afternoon in late September when the summer heat had finally begun to release its grip on the city. Difficult, Mia said honestly. We are studying institutional trauma. The ways that systems are designed to break certain people. It made me angry. Good, Alejandro said, and something in his dark eyes flickered like a match being struck. Anger is useful. Anger means you are awake. She asked about Emma almost every visit. The girl had been placed with a foster family in Pasadena, was attending a new school, was seeing a trauma specialist twice a week. Progress was slow. Some days Emma did not speak. Other days she drew pictures of butterflies and flowers, as if trying to fill her mind with something beautiful to counterbalance the ugliness she had seen. She asks about you sometimes, Mia told Alejandro one October afternoon. She remembers that you helped her. She wants to know if you are okay. Alejandro set down his coffee cup with careful precision. Tell her I am well. Tell her that she is brave, and that brave girls deserve the world to be gentle with them. She is only 8, Mia whispered. Then the world has 8 more years to prove itself worthy of her, Alejandro replied, and something in his voice suggested that if it failed to do so, there would be consequences. Meanwhile, in a federal prison in West Virginia, Catherine Mercer sat in a cell with a stainless steel toilet and a thin mattress, watching the other inmates keep their distance from her. The news of her downfall had spread everywhere. 45 years. Her penthouse had been seized. Her foundation dissolved. The victims of her network, all of them, had been located and placed in protective custody with counselors and safe housing and the chance, finally, to breathe. She would never again walk into a room and feel powerful. She would die in that cell, or in one like it, and the world would have forgotten her name by then. In Terminal Island Federal Penitentiary, Douglas Hale occupied a cell 6 hours away from the city where he had thought he was untouchable. 40 years without parole. His hands, which had broken bones and shattered lives, now did nothing but grip a plastic lunch tray. He had asked about Mia 3 times. Where she was, whether she had survived, whether she was still breathing. The guards told him nothing. That absence of information was, in some ways, worse than any answer could have been. By November, Mia had stopped flinching when doors opened unexpectedly. She had stopped sleeping with a knife under her pillow. She had attended 12 therapy sessions with a trauma specialist named Dr. Amanda Chen, who never pushed, never demanded details Mia was not ready to share, just sat in a quiet office with walls painted a gentle blue and listened. Mia had processed the fear. She had started reclaiming her own narrative, understanding that what had happened to her was not her fault. That survival itself was an act of rebellion. She took a part-time job at a bookstore called the Story House on Sunset Boulevard. 30 hours a week shelving books, helping customers find stories that might matter to them. She stood at the register with her shoulders back, making eye contact, speaking in a voice that did not apologize for existing. The other employees noticed the change in her. There was something different about Mia Sinclair. She was not the same woman who had been invisible just 3 months ago. On a cold evening in early December, Mia asked Landlord to walk with her after their coffee. They moved through downtown Los Angeles as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The city was beautiful in a harsh way, all concrete and ambition and desperate dreams. They ended up at Eddie's diner without planning to. The same checkered floor. The same neon lights buzzing against the darkness. But this time it was 11 o'clock in the evening, not 3 in the morning. There was no rain. Just clear sky and city lights spreading across Los Angeles like scattered diamonds. They sat in the same booth where she had fallen apart. The vinyl seats were cracked in the same places. The coffee smelled the same. But everything was different now. She was different now. "Why do you keep coming back?" Mia asked Landlord, her hands wrapped around a cup of chamomile tea that the waitress had brought without asking. "You could have anyone. I am still just—" "Stop," he said, his voice cutting through the diner's quiet hum like a blade. "You are not just anything. You are the woman who fought a man twice her size with nothing but her hands and her heart. That is not just. That is everything." She reached across the small table and took his hand. His palm was warm, calloused, marked with a small scar that ran across his knuckles. She did not ask him about the scar. She did not need to. "I was invisible my entire life," she said softly. "My parents, my landlords, the people I worked for. No one saw me. You saw me. Not to save me. To believe that I could save myself." "I see you now," Landlord said, and his dark eyes held something she had not seen before. Vulnerability. Raw and exposed. Every single day. "I see you." Outside the diner, the city breathed. Somewhere in Pasadena, Emma drew another butterfly, adding wings in shades of blue and gold. In a federal prison, Douglas Hale counted the days, knowing none of them would bring him freedom. In another cell, Catherine Mercer stared at a wall and understood that empire built on the suffering of others crumbles at the first touch of truth. Mia stood up and moved to Landlord's side of the booth. She sat next to him, close enough that their shoulders touched. He turned to face her completely, and she saw it then, in his expression, the boy he had been before violence claimed him. The boy who wanted to believe in goodness, in redemption, in the possibility of being loved despite everything he had done. "I am standing as your equal now," she said. "You always were," he replied. They kissed then, slow and gentle, 6 months of waiting breaking open like a flower after rain. His hand came up to cup the back of her head, careful, tender, as if she were made of something precious and fragile. When they pulled apart, she whispered against his shoulder, "Sometimes one hand reached out at the right moment can change an entire life." The neon lights of Eddie's diner glowed above them, the same lights that had witnessed her desperation months ago, now witnessing her transformation. She had rebuilt herself from ash and silence and the smallest spark of hope. She had her grandmother's recipe book back. She had a future that was hers to write. And she had a man who understood, finally, that protecting someone is not about power. It is about love. It is about standing beside them while they heal, believing in them when they cannot believe in themselves, and knowing that some victories are not measured in dominance but in the redemption of a single human heart. If this story moved you deeply, if you felt Mia's journey in your own chest, Please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss the stories that remind us all why love, courage, and justice matter. Leave a comment below and tell us which moment hit you the hardest. Was it when she stood up to Douglas Hale? When she found her grandmother's recipe book? When she and Alindro finally kissed in that diner where everything changed? We read every comment, and your words are what inspire us to keep telling these stories that celebrate the strength of the human spirit. We wish you good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. No matter how hard life gets, remember that after the rain, the sky clears. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We will see you in the next story.